So, Skeleton Crew just finished up, and I really had no expectations for this show at all, which I think is in line with what most Star Wars fans were thinking when this was revealed as well. Even as a diehard fan of this new era especially, I really wasn't head over heels for this. This show was going to follow a plotline about finding yet another mysterious planet, which after Ahsoka and Rise of Skywalker and Force Awakens and Bad Batch and Jedi Survivor, I was really bored of this kind of story. I just wanted something new. Not to mention the marketing was non-existent. The show seemed to be heavily leaning into 80s nostalgia, which I was also kind of sick of. I wasn't excited for a Star Wars Goonies story, especially since Goonies doesn't really hold up on repeated viewings. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but that's just how I feel. There's too many characters with no central focus, and because of that, the story suffers with no vision, which is what I was expecting this show to follow suit with as well. That being said, I did want to give the show a chance. The cast seemed cute, and Jude Law's a charismatic actor, which I think most people won't argue with. So with that being said, I adore this show. This is quite possibly some of the most fun I've had with the Star Wars project since the first season of The Mandalorian. It is so refreshing and fun to the point where at the end of every episode, I just wanted more. Almost every criticism I have with modern Star Wars is absent in this show, and I feel like most people who don't even like Disney-era Star Wars like Skeleton Crew. And I think the reason for that is simply because of how grounded it is. Skeleton Crew essentially takes a step back from the galactic doomsday and takes a look at everyday life in Star Wars, and that's something I've been dying to see more of. Whenever there's a character who pops up in a story that isn't inherently good or bad, or a Jedi or a Sith, I tend to gravitate towards them. Mando gave us a taste of that, with most of the cast either being made up of bounty hunters and lawmen, but it's also why I liked characters like the Frog Lady so much in Season 2. She was essentially just a mom who wanted to take care of her children and get home to her husband. That motivation, while accompanying a generally silly character, is grounded, and it was a nice change of pace from the plot being, we need to defeat the bad guys. Skeleton Crew magnifies this concept by every character in the show not being inherently good or evil. There are antagonists like the pirates, but this is the first Star Wars show to ever release in the past 5 years without the villains being the Empire. The pirates are just people down on their luck who happen to be pricks, and the main characters are just kids who aren't trying to get in a fight, which I think is why everyone fell in love with them so fast. The kids are essentially just in-universe Star Wars fans, which helps us empathize with them. We've all yearned to be a Jedi, we've all had a crush on a girl out of our league, we've all been picked on by a neighborhood jock, we've all struggled with anxiety or some form of a disability in our lives. It's incredibly likely that someone watching this relates to at least one of the main cast. I know I certainly did. I also like how each of the kids are distinct and likable in their own way, while also acting like a kid their age would act. Wim is selfish like any 10-year-old would be, but he's still charming and endearing. Neil is just innocence personified and incredibly naive, which makes him being the fan favorite so easy to understand. Fern is strong-headed, but still shows a sense of insecurity, which shows itself the more the show progresses. And KB ended up being my favorite by being socially sheltered and shy, but still incredibly compassionate and understanding. Her disability is used in a refreshing message as well. It's not just the cliche, people with disabilities can do anything mantra. Rather, not everyone can move at the same pace, and that's okay. It's important to recognize your flaws. All the kids have great chemistry with one another and give the best performances I've seen in a child ensemble since, Stranger Things. Also, Jude Law is the best character in this whole show. He's just so good at being a massive dickhead, yet his energy is so captivating that I can't help but love him whenever he shows up. He's one of the best original villains in this franchise in a long time. I was annoyed we were gonna get another mentor takes care of child story, since that trope kinda peaked in The Mandalorian and Bad Batch, but the show twists the trope on its head by making Jod the antagonist. They do try to trick you halfway through into thinking he's gonna be a reluctant father figure, but that's so quickly subverted, and I applauded the show for trying something new. I don't like twist villains that much, but this is one I genuinely was happy to see unfold. The show is just really good at taking cliche Star Wars tropes and subverting them. The twist villain is used properly, the child mentor angle is thrown out the window almost immediately, the lost planet we need to find is introduced to us first, first, rather than drip feed us as the season goes on, like in Ahsoka, for example. The 80s nostalgia is used sparingly, and most of the tropes are the best executed versions of those respective tropes. I find it hilarious how this show is trying to homage Goonies, but it's better than Goonies in almost every regard. I also love how there are no cameos in this show. There is one pre-established character that shows up in this entire series, and it's Vane. I not only love that the fan service is used well in this regard, but I appreciate how they picked a character who fits the setting and is used just enough to establish the time period and sense of familiarity. In another universe, Hondo would have shown up and distracted us from the story, but I'm so happy they chose Vane. I love this dude. All of the pirates are a lot of fun. They aren't really three-dimensional, but they give just enough time to each of them to have little moments of levity and color and personality traits for them. Everything about this show was almost perfect. Almost. My one issue with this show lies with the finale. This was definitely one of the better Star Wars finales, but I feel like the last scene was just a little too abrupt. It's almost as if there's a scene missing that showcases the falling action. It would be like if Ahsoka just ended with Thrawn escaping and we didn't get to follow up with all the characters and their respective endings before the cut to credits. Seeing the return to normalcy and a proper conclusion to these characters, as well as how their lives are going to change in the future, would have been welcome. And while I hope the show gets a season 2, I'm a little concerned that may not happen. Despite that issue, Skeleton Crew was a breath of fresh air we all needed as Star Wars fans. Nothing too deep to give us an existential crisis, but a comforting sense of wonder that made me feel like a kid again. Good performances, the sound design is exceptional, the music is now iconic, and the costuming is amazing. So 8 out of 10, on to 2025, where the next Star Wars show we're going to be getting will probably be really miserable. Happy New Year, everybody!